Good morning. It's Tuesday, April 25th, 2006. I'm Lee Cook, and with us is Dr. John C. Wright, the second president of the University of Alabama, Huntsville, chemistry professor, and science education, hands-on science educator extraordinaire. John, we're glad you're here. Thank you, Lee. John, I'd like to kind of lead you through your career, if we could, maybe starting out with some of your early on in education and kind of how you got into academia.
I really didn't start in academic work. When my first job was a research chemist in Wilmington, Delaware. But I had a phone call from the dean at the institution where I had done my baccalaureate work. And the chemistry professor there had died. He'd been there for 37 years. And the dean invited me to come back and take that position. And the thing that really persuaded me to go was I thought, you know, when he died after 37 years, because I was just one of many students he had sent on to graduate school, that must have been a pretty good feeling. So I thought that I would go join faculty at the little college in West Virginia, Western. And but after about 6 years, I determined that faculty deserved better deans than we had. And so I went to the National Science Foundation for a year to learn about science education all over the nation, and then went to the University of Michigan Center for the Study of Higher Education, which was a program, postdoctorate program to prepare deans. And then from there I went to Northern Arizona University as a dean of College of Arts and Sciences, and back to West Virginia University as a dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, then joined the governing board for the state as the vice chancellor for academic affairs, and there came up.
So before you went to academia, though, you were a research chemist.
In industry.
Yeah. Did you enjoy that? Or?
Oh, I didn't leave because I was unhappy. I enjoyed that work very much. But I just felt the others would be more comfortable like that.
How long were you in the industry?
About 6 years.
So you came to UAH in 1978?
78.
And I'm sure the board of trustees, after picking you, gave you some marching orders. Could you tell us a little bit about the first kinds of things that you were faced with, some of the challenges, some of the things that you had to do first?
Well, it's sort of a humorous incident. There were two key vice presidents in both were key. Captain Crossman, I had been told by the Chancellor, Joe Volker, that they had a mandatory retirement for administrators at age 65, and that Captain Crossman was in that year was coming up, and so one of the key things was to hire a new vice president for academic affairs. So that was really the first year's major task. I remember the humorous incident where I offered her the opportunity to make the announcement, but it was in the fall, and time was passing, and we needed to get on with it. And I remember she just wouldn't make the announcement. And so finally I gave her a deadline and said, if you don't, I will. And I did. And the thing that really surprised me was she didn't think her age was anybody's business. And so in the announcement I had to state that there was a mandatory retirement. But that was the surprise the first year. But we were very fortunate on our end.
How old was the physicist?
He was a physicist. I don't know. We had the standard search committee, and there were candidates that weren't in science, I recall, but Elmer just rose to the top in that search, and he was very fortunate.
Yes, he was very dynamic individual. So we go along. What do you think, after getting a new vice president on board, and of course you had the other vice president stay on for a while before he left, tell us some of the feel major accomplishments for your first term as president? You had 2 terms as president, so maybe during the first 5 years, what stands out in your mind?
The need to build trust at UAH. My recollection was that it was 2 people. That Joe Dowell had one and Captain Crossland had the other. And the contributions to the university were measured by each of those as your contributions to that camp. And so one of the first things was to build a situation where we want to build trust. I mean, we're going to be governed by rules that have been written that everybody knows, and that's what we're going to go by, not by personalities and personal loyalty. That was a major, really major issue in Illinois.
I remember some of those. Yeah, it was. That's a very good point.
You know, one of the guys, I can't remember who was doing it, political science sociology, somewhere gave me a book to read, and it was called The Schizophrenic Organization. And after I read it, I knew why he gave it to me. It was a period of a president who had lost control and 2 vice presidents who were in charge creates a schizophrenic organization. And that's really what we had. I remember when Rosie told me when we were talking about Dr. Dowell had this, Crossland had this, and that you had this small unit in the middle for public relations. And I had to explain to him, no, that wasn't right. I had it all. But that was the Cody's idea. I think that was the one.
He was doing very well. Of course, a big job of being president is working with outside constituents. Citizens across one area, Army, NASA. Could you talk a little bit about, especially during the first term, before we move to the second term, how do you want to work? You got on what? How do you work that?
I don't remember the first time that Bill Lucas did that early stages, but of course we had people all over the country that were working with NASA, and it was something we naturally encouraged. I don't remember taking a leadership. I did, every time a general at the arsenal changed, I remember staying in touch with them. Another thing I remember is that the board met on our campus once a year. And one of the things was, okay, what can we do to help them to understand UAH? So that we generally did not have normal campus visits. I used it as an opportunity to introduce them to martial or to the Army activities. And one thing I recall was that Bob Moore was commanding general of the Army. The trustees out and sat with him for a while. And one of the trustees, Bob chewed him out wrong. He just chewed him out. He said, I get more money to Georgia Tech than I get the whole state of Alabama. You people ought to be ashamed. They don't know what they're supposed to do. And I remember that I was really surprised that there was no academic was going to do that. But Bob was just really close. And one of the things I remember was the new trustee said, I wanted to tell you, I'd only been a trustee for a few months.
Well, in fact, of course, you were the first president to, and in my opinion, to really have close links with the countries you lived next to the Congress. And doing that, you're very good at working with what we call the old custodians.
It seemed to me that was crucial that the message that I wanted to relay to the community was that Huntsville has dreams of what it wants to be, and it can't be that without a university. So you've got to support the university. And they did, and it comes through very nicely. But one of the hurdles in that was that they supported the university not through love, but because that was the business thing to do. And it was different because the supporter of Tuscaloosa was Auburn, loved the institution and could tolerate mistakes. But these guys, it was a business investment, and if you screwed up, then they were not quite so lucky.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah. Well, not just pressure not to make big mistakes. I think most faculty don't on this anyway.
In fact, coming back to talking about generals and the arsenal, you said you kept up with them. I can remember one in particular that made a wonderful hire, and he became the director of the Department of Education, General George Turnmeyer, who's still here in town. Want to make any comments about that?
Oh, that was one of those orthodox, shrewd moves I think that worked out. And I remember the discussion with Elmer, because Elmer was more of a traditional academic. And that Elmer wanted to go to, first of all, we needed a co-op focus. I think they had one name, but it was not very good. The decision was that George Turnmeyer knew the town. George Turnmeyer could learn about co-op and would be accepting the job. So he accepted the job, was there for 10 years. And you're right, because you're actually here, the co-op of the year, and the state all that comes out. Yeah, that was a really good move, and one of the first things he had his money, one of the first things he did was he got a grant to build a co-op.
Yes, I worked with George, and he was a dream worker. And every faculty member ever worked with him felt the same way. He was a general, so he got things done. So we go along here. We've gotten some trucks established. We've got the rules written down. Made the contacts with the community. Things are going along. We now must be up to about 83, and you are become president again, the board of trustees select you again for your second term of presidency. And move us along in there. Where are we now? What are our plans? What are our dreams for that next for the second term?
Well, I think I made a fundamental error, maybe, because it was just sort of do everything expedite, do it faster. Yet I think during the second administration, we unleashed resistance to the movement. There was resistance to building a university that close to the community and that technical. But one of the big things we did was Elmer and a group of individuals decided where the research concentration was. And we decided that we should do two things. One is a cluster, so that you're not working as much as an individual researcher. And secondly, that you create synergy.
That synergy going.
Yeah, and then hire and make an outstanding hire to do that. And
I believe that group.
yeah, that you could, and in fact, with the aid of, oh my God, block on the man's name, the head of the Taylor David, Barishaw, yeah, senior, that, and Joe Oldham King, we all agreed that optics is the first area, and that we ought to get a grant from the state in order to launch that. And we did. I mean, they brought through a grant of, I don't know, a couple $1 million. It was good. And then I remember the problem, okay, you got $2 million, what are you going to do? And I was getting conflicting advice that we really needed to hire from the outside. We had some talent inside, but they weren't the ones who
age-wise.
Yeah,
Faculty.
Yeah, but say, you didn't have anybody in office who could step up and do a $2 million, and that's why I guess we ended up hiring John Caulfield. And there was a committee of community optics people, Roy Nichols and some others, that were advising us on that. And we got down to two very good candidates. One was John Caulfield and the other was an optics person from Southern Cal. And I remember Tommy, in fact, that after we interviewed him, that the guy from Southern Cal was going to do a standard way. He was not good in optics and he was going to build around himself and then start another area of optics. And he said, but then Caulfield was going to recreate a whole bunch of them. It was much more of a risk, whereas this one was to try and do methods. And we went to Caulfield. And that guy, he was astonishing because when he came, the headline right after that on the newspaper was he was on fire. He assured me that he had it. And I introduced it. I remember when I was in Washington, I went to a conference to visit a person knowledgeable about optics. And I visited some others and got to advice around the country. But he wasn't just BSing it, because I couldn't tell. And I remember what was the head of the missile intelligence, Randy Clinton. When he interviewed John Caulfield, filed up to him later, said, tell me, evaluate this. I couldn't judge whether it was just blowing smoke or not.
I couldn't either. I sat in certain meetings, and Harold Wilson was, no, I guess he wasn't, he was on the committee. I couldn't, I kind of erred maybe on the side of a lot of BS.
Yeah, they're very good. They're very good, but they brought in money. I don't think he was a good administrator. There was turmoil in that. But we did build up the office capability of bringing in the chairman of physics and the chairman of electrical engineering. And so that worked. Our basic idea worked, but there was a big thing.
Well, we only have a sense of optics here now. I want to come back to one thing. I remember, vividly, I was there, you were setting up the different research centers, identifying the talent, bringing together, trying to synergize things. But you mentioned that there was resistance. Could you speak a little bit about that? From the faculty?
Well, there were, I think that if you weren't if you were over here in a sideshow, you resent the faculty can do the attention to certain areas. There were some that was legitimate. I remember we created one unit internally, STU, Space Flight. And I remember the session with ST and the Scots guy that later became graduate dean.
Oh, Gordon.
Emily Gordon. And it was a really good meeting, but because ST offered me the opportunity to explain why I thought units like these probably good. You could gain advantage by working together. Gordon didn't like the idea. He was an individualist and he wanted to do his grants. And that was fine, but I'm convinced in later years I was on a panel with the National Academy of Sciences to evaluate an NSF program that was oriented around what we call multi-individual initiated trade, multi-individual initiated. And it's clear that I think most of the government funding has gone in that direction. In fact, one of the people who gave testimony was a chemistry professor at Berkeley, who was an individual researcher and was sort of crying because he was having trouble getting grants because the money was going into the grants. But Gordon's objection was not personal. Somebody else was getting dollar billing or anything like that. This was a legitimate concern. I think the history has proven that it is good for an institution to be one of the early ones.
Absolutely. One only has to look at the history of ceasefire to say that it's definitely a very good season. And very productive. Actually, really a long time. Ceasefire was a long time. So we get up near the end of your presidency. As I recall, there was a fair amount of construction, either already funded and had broken ground, or they had done some breaking of ground. In fact, I remember this southeast house was going to be launched, wasn't it?
Then this is southeast house.
The one down there, the material science building in the office building.
Okay. Yeah, so actually, that came in my first year of funding for that, federal funding, and Ben had prepared the proposal, and I just took credit for it. Joe Sparks advised me that would be fine. And then the dirtiest thing was that we submitted a proposal right at that time, and because we didn't have the housing, it looked equally good too, so we got a second one. And that enabled us to build that housing. At some point, everybody, it has been a long-term goal that the public radio station ought to be associated with UAH. And the Vice President, Ken Thompson, who replaced Joe, came up with a scheme of where they could fund, we could build a building and they would fund it. And I'm trying to think of
That was over 10 years because I remember very vividly when trying in 74, 75, when I was up in the old Times building, trying to get out on campus. Couldn't get out on campus.
yeah, the only requirement that was in that was that they would state they were located on the UAH campus. They didn't want to be managed by us or to have that as a UAH facility, but we agreed that, okay, that would be the expectation. I'm trying to think, well, one of the early buildings that we had to build was the University Center. And I remember, I called them my union. I was calling a student union. And I remember the problems I had in town when they wanted an engineering building. And I said, we need you. And that was, that just didn't go over with these people. I finally had to start calling them a separate system. But the move to, thanks for 3 or 4 years, I guess, where we hired Gene Fisher as the vice president of the youth there and began to build a lot of things.
And that certainly, as we look at it today, when I'm out on campus, it's come a long way.
Yeah.
It started with really few. And then the goal of the county.
Yeah, and we were, another thing that I had trouble getting the merit of the idea across was the use of advisory committee. That one of the first people was an engineer. And I remember that even from Elmer said that once they find out and I said, well, I got no place else to go. I mean, we're the engineering program in town, and they're going to support us, and all we have to do is work with them. Oh, I'll tell you another thing that came in there, and that was one of the early things was to establish what is called an institutional research group that tells you how many students you have in what program. And I remember that was a major move because one of the big arguments with the engineers was how many students they had. And so we had to get a neutral source there, a research group that could answer that question.
And as I recall, the first one was all things liberal arts. It was a historian from Andy
And we did, yeah.
who was extremely good.
She was good. She was very good.
And was it?
Yeah, and I remember one of the first meetings we had with the engineering advisors was engineering faculty. And there was an argument between Elmer and them over how many students there were. And they counted any students that they said engineering or something. Anyway, I remember the statement from the staff. It was so good because if you can define it, you can. So that we were heading towards that. The other thing was, real surprise to me was that Mark Smith, I assume he was one of the only engineering advisors. And I talked to him about it. He said, no, he's going to be on the business. And Dave Billings was very receptive to having those faculty once he had the college started. And Mark has been a real question.
Yeah, certainly.
But the Catholic Cross wasn't interested in establishing it was a new kind of thing. But, and I guess there is some danger that they take too much control, but the people aren't going to give you money. They're not going to just leave money on the stock. Unless you feel like it, unless you think I spend it any way you like it.
Exactly. Especially in this, there's some fairly hard.
Yeah.
So, after 10 years, some eternity, the president, you decided to step down as president. But before I take you, because we have a very interesting career after that, if you were to look back now, or think of that, 10 years, if you would have to say 2 or 3 things that you really felt made a difference, and certainly in your, what would it be? In your terms, President.
Well, actually, the big thing that made a difference was the search funnel. Because when I came in, there were 2 models for a university that were talked about. I don't know if you say Grafton. You see it as a regional university or as an MIT itself. And you couldn't answer that question because even though the community wanted an MIT itself, there's lots of other elements in the community. And I think the model Ben followed was the Millsap experience. It was a good undergraduate liberal arts education. And so you naturally had that tension. But I think the major thing was that when the search committee searched, they decided that they wanted an institution that would be responsible for them. And that, in a way, that I felt it was the idea needed to be tested. Through the search for the next president, what is it we're looking for? And although the personal selection wasn't very good, the trend was established. Where we want to go, the Dulo and the Joe Moulton and Frank Cross. And so the direction I think that we started is continuing, and I think that's the major thing.
Well, then you stepped down, returned to the council platform, you were teaching full-time. Well, part-time because, or was it, did you take a sabbatical?
It was suggested that I should not be here the first year. And I think there were reasons that they didn't want me active on campus or in town. But the other thing was, I really needed to bring myself more up to date again. And that worked.
What did you do on this thing? Number of things?
I got in touch with chemistry education people, attended the national meetings and summer workshops, and visited some individuals that were outstanding in that area. But I submitted a proposal. We were active with the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, and the proposal to improve pre-college science education through the SDN and improve undergraduate education. And so I worked on that. I had been chairman of the SU committee on science, and so we worked through that committee and had a resolution passed with that. But basically I was preparing myself to teach undergraduate chemistry, and also exploring work with public schools, because I had done some of that back at Western University in the post-Courtney stage. They've gotten grants from the National Science Foundation to work with talented high school students. And visited high school teachers here in Huntsville to see, to see whether they were interested in improving the high school chemistry. And I found that there was a lukewarm reception that we don't really need improvement. And I visited the undergraduates or the faculty at UAH about how responsive they might be, because I think there's evidence that undergraduate education is improved quite a bit too. But there were two stumbling blocks. One is the faculty weren't terribly interested. The second was that it would be lab-oriented. Your lab instructors were foreign graduate students, and you couldn't put a big responsibility on them. So by study of where I could spend my time took me then to the elementary grade. The nation was moving to improve science education, and there was a general philosophy that it would start at the bottom and build through. And so I sort of linked into that area and got some grants. But the chamber created the Science Education Group, and Joe Welcome was chairman of that, and we were concerned, they were concerned about students not continuing in science in public schools. And that program focused from grade 4 to 8. And my contribution was that if we were going to attract students into science, you had to do things with the hands. And you had to involve the students in doing things, not just doing the old stuff. And so we got the first grant, and that was from the National Science Foundation, that was to build school industry partnerships. And we made a mistake because our goal was to put one scientist engineer in every school in the Huntsville and Madison County school district. And we did that, but there's so much energy that is required to make that effective that you couldn't really do it. So we basically gave up on that as being a goal. And it was also difficult if you're really trying to change school, it's difficult to work with both elementary and middle school simultaneously. They're two different creatures. So our second proposal was elementary school revision of the curriculum, because by that time we learned that was another thing. When we started, they were writing curriculum for that was an extension of the state course of study. And the literature that was coming out from the National Academy was that within the AAAS, the criticism of the science curriculum was that it was overstuffed and undernourished. And so just adding to it is really great problems that there's too much in it. And the teachers wanted to create additions. And so we had to say, no, it's $1 million endeavor to create, and it takes an awful lot of work. There's good stuff out there, we'll use that. And so we got a little grant, Bill Lewis was very helpful, and NASA gave us a small grant that enabled 10 teachers to try these curriculum materials. And the teachers tried it and found that much superior to what we created, and it was much more coherent. And so the teachers as a group went along with that. Another problem we ran into was how do you supply the materials today? Because traditionally, if you're going to be a teacher who uses materials, you have to just scrounge or go get them. And we took the view of industry that you would supply materials that employees need. And that's what the school system should do too. And we created that material center that could deliver the materials to the teachers. And through manipulation where the kit can go to 4 different students during the year and be refurbished, the cost was comparable to the textbook cost. And then we ran into an issue that Huntsville and Madison County has gotten there. Are other districts likely want to follow? Or would we run into, I don't want to do what they're doing, I think. But we did the same kind of thing. We had some teachers pilot these materials that were so carefully selected in certain schools, and they loved it. And so we did it systematically about, after we worked with Huntsville and Madison County and had that program going. It was a 5-year change. Each year the teachers was introduced to a new module of material and the appropriate change of teaching style. But then we followed with Athens and Decatur and Scottsboro Labor and Fort Payne and Gordon County. And but it was, I remember having phone calls from superintendents who say, we've heard your workshops are good, you've got a workshop for us, and the answer was no. If you want to change the way you teach, we'll work with you to do it, but we don't get to do workshops. And that's been one of the criticisms of professional development for teachers, that doesn't lead anything, it just fits into.
It was an interesting collaboration in the early days. You mentioned Bill Lucas, of course. Here we have, I'm not an ex-president, Bill Lucas, ex-marshal director, the two of them getting together and planning what later became the Institute for Science Education, and gave it a formal structure that the then president could support and point to and channel things to, which was very helpful. But I found that in collaboration.
It was very effective, and the Institute was needed. I don't know where you report now. You reported directly to the president, if I recall.
No, to the program.
The program, I'm sorry, to the program, yeah. And Bill was the one who, Bill Lucas thought that was crucial. It would not be under any colleague or anybody else, but go right to the top. And that was your thing.
Well, I don't know how closely we follow their progress, but they have the middle school was one, and have a very, very nice facility over in Shelby Hall, and it was space and a lot of people. I was looking at their list of personnel. They've grown and they seem to be doing well.
Grants have continued, and after the National Science Foundation grant for the elementary, the district took over, not only supporting the materials, but also supporting professional development. But you're right, the original idea was if you start with the elementary grade, move to the middle school, and that's where the national movement is. It's gotten to the middle schools now, and it's not clear what to do at the secondary level yet.
Yeah, because things are so fragmented and specialized. Or they like to think so.
Yeah, and there's a lot of thinking about, do we really want the three subjects in that sequence? The biology, chemistry, and physics, because neither physics, chemistry doesn't come to biology. There's a lot of, or should they be integrated? There's a lot of ferment going on, but there's no clear direction. Now, meanwhile, there's another thing that has happened that is quite relevant to all of this, is their understanding of learning has progressed markedly. Not through any single discipline, but through
Styles of learning, way people learn.
well, no, it's more fundamental than that. It's the brain studies as to how the brain actually physically changes when you learn something. And cognitive science is emerging in the field as well as neurology and psychology. So what's happened now is that you can recognize that there's a mismatch between the concept of teaching and all the professional efforts to make teachers and the concept of what's required for learning. And so that at some point we will move more towards facilitating learning, which requires the teacher's got 25 individuals in there, not a batch of 25, but 25 individuals learning at their own rates and in different ways. Much more complex situation. But there's not much indication that the teaching profession is aware of that.
And it would seem that a lot of specialized training would be necessary if you're going to handle, as you say, 25 individuals in an effective way. We would definitely have to change the way our education system is run.
I think that's right. It would require a really different philosophy, and in their defense, that we just don't know enough yet about learning or how to measure the big movement. Well, there's a lot of the state measures your learning and then reports on it and so on. And I've heard in the manufacturing industry that we need to go to a system. Our old manufacturing system was some external force check the quality of your work. There was a quality checker along the way, and the new method is everybody's responsible for quality. At some point, we probably need to do that in education, but not the state checking your quality, but you checking it all along. But we don't know how to do it. That's the matter.
The old idea of assessment, which they're still grappling with.
Oh, yeah. It's really difficult to, you can get numbers out, but to really know what you're assessing is much more difficult.
I guess toward the end of your career there at UAH, you were pretty much full-time involved in the Institute for Science Education. You weren't teaching anymore.
Yeah, I had enough money to buy myself out of the standard chemistry courses.
And so you decided to retire. I put that in quotes, of course. What would that have been, about the mid-90s or early 90s?
I think I officially left UAH right after we got a 5-year grant.
I knew you had a grant to continue.
And so I was retired, but continuing. And there was a UAH rule that you couldn't be a director of a project if you were not an employee. And I remember them writing to NSF and saying they were removing me and replacing me with somebody else.
I think they may have made Sam.
Sam McManus,
the
UAH wrote back and said, UAH wrote back and said you can add anybody you want to, but you can't remove him. And that worked out That went almost, I guess, to the end of the millennium. And then Hugh came in, and I ran for the middle school.
Physicist.
Yeah.
And he is just retired.
Yeah, and recently I was contacted by the National, I can't remember the name, National Center for the Study of Science, the National Center for Research in Science.
Yeah, the one we used to work with.
Right. They had to figure out the, and so I'm working as a consultant for them. And the most recent proposal that we submitted to Shell Development Company. Shell has made the decision that they want to be active in New Orleans. They want to have a company presence and do what they need to build the infrastructure so it comes back. And part of the infrastructure is science education. And so they've gone to the National Science Resources Center and asked them for advice and would they be willing to run a program. And I was hired as a consultant and we've got a proposal in.
Great, I didn't know that. I'm glad to hear that you're back in business again.
It's interesting though because there are two things. NSRC has always been a giver of advice, and it's good advice, but they've never directly operated. And so this is a change. Can they and Shell get together and they run a program where they're directly responsible for changing the schools in New Orleans? And then there's loads of other factors right now because the NSRC wants and demands involvement from Shell and other business leaders because they're not sure they can trust the political side of things with the education system. So that it's a really ticklish kind of thing. But it could be the first major metropolitan area in the country that systematically changed their science education.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, that should be fun.
Yeah, that should be much fun. I'm glad to hear you back in. John, is there anything that we've missed along the way? Anything reminiscence you'd like to put on this table?
Yeah, one thing came to my mind when you mentioned Bill Lucas. Bill was key that after he retired from Marshall, he came to UAH and drafted a plan for the UAH as a space center, and then helped orchestrate the national legislation to create, what were they, Space Center University? Like
Space University.
Space University, like the Ag thing. And then we were the very first one.
We were.
Space University.
Certainly in Huntsville. Certainly in Alabama. I don't know nationally.
And I remember the big worry was, can we keep it a secret? Because what do we do if A&M says they want to get a space university? So we took it to the board for approval for us as a space university before the national program started.
That's something I didn't know.
That's it. But I think that we've covered an awful lot, probably enough.
I appreciate you coming and being a part of this, John. As always, it's good to talk to you.
It's been a pleasure. Reminiscing.